Hey, this applies to 99% of the world. I mean, 99% of the nation, not 98.9. I mean, 99.
Just like that paternity test you took.
Okay, and if you're the 1%, this don't apply to you. But for the rest of y'all, 99%, man, tap in. Boost Mobile coverage nationwide. You apply for this, it's great. Tap in with Boost Mobile.
If you switch over to Boost Mobile right now, you can get an iPhone 15 with crazy camera work.
That is a 48 megapixel camera for $99.99.
That's right, $99.99.
On a 5G network. It's nationwide.
And I'm 99% sure that Boost Mobile just gave us a crazy deal with this promo.
Nah, this is crazy.
You are the father.
It does require credit qualification, ID verification, and an activation on a $60 plan. Taxes are extra, and 5G speeds may not be available in all areas.
But they said it was nationwide.
Just not in your hood. Your neighbor good, though.
When a trade like Luka happens, right, and it kind of shocks the league, like, what's it like in the league office? Like, do y'all know, like, whoa, this is about to be wild or?
Wave the trade!
Since before, first of all, I'll say one of the misnomers I think out there is that I have the power to disapprove a trade.
Yeah.
I don't. What the league's role is, as you can imagine, in a cap system and a set of rules around trades, what happens is before the trade is known publicly, although sometimes they're leaked or they're informally announced, but for a trade to be official, it gets called into the league office. Yeah. It's kind of old school, where both teams have to get on the phone and lawyers and people in basketball operations literally line up the contract. So if somebody, make it up, is making $8 million, you have to ensure that the other team has $8 million of cap space in order to sign that player. You have to assure that it complies with all of our rules. And so we get, if assuming a trade hasn't been leaked, a call will come into the league office. A team will say, we want to set up a trade call. Both sides will be on the call. It's a little bit like anybody who's bought a home and there's a closing.
Yeah.
It's the closest thing where you got to make sure like you indeed have the title to the house and there's been an inspection and there's a contract, all those things. So there's, in essence, a checklist. And then the trade becomes official. So we don't, and because the teams often, in particular trades, and Luka's a good example where the teams are very secretive, they're not necessarily tipping us off. We learn about it. I mean, we learn about it be ahead of the public, but it's usually only a question of hours because we have to go through that official process of approving it, but not sooner than that.
Was that like when you seen that come across, were you kind of shocked? Like,
yeah, I would only say, because in many ways I'm a fan like others, and teams aren't necessarily calling the league office for suggestions on player movement.
Yeah.
So there's the fan in me that only because that's not a player move that people were talking about or the shows like yours were talking about, I was surprised from that standpoint.
Yeah. I want to ask you that question. Obviously, with the game growing, media is evolving, ever-changing, right? You got player podcasts, you got independent stuff like that. What's one thing you think that the actual media outlets could improve that could actually help the game? I know we get a lot of criticism, but what's something that we could actually help promote the game better or help progress?
Well, first of all, I'll just say, kind of in the same lane when I was talking about movies about the NBA, I'm very appreciative of the amount of media coverage we get. I recognize it's not all going to be positive, but to me, as long as it's genuinely from the heart and it's real passion and people aren't making up stories about us, I appreciate it. And, it's one of the things great about sports is people come with their opinions.
Yeah.
And they like things, they dislike things, and we learn from that too. And we pay attention to social media, we pay attention to traditional media. You get great ideas from there. I think the only thing I'd add, to the extent there's more media that's educating fans about what goes into championship basketball, I think sometimes if you haven't been close to the game, and I've learned a lot over my time because I didn't play at a high level, to understand that it's not just about effort, it's about the plays that are unfolding, it's about the sophistication of the coaching, it's about the sophistication of the scouting. I think sometimes understanding what goes into being an NBA player, the amount of hard work, the amount of training, but also I think sometimes because the way our game is called, it's moving so quickly, even for the best announcers, play-by-play announcers like Mike Breen, or the best color commentaries, the best color commentary. It's moving so fast, there's not necessarily time to explain everything that's happening. That, it's not just this guy is off tonight, but he may be off because this incredible defense. And what is the scheme? And what is that defense? So I think sometimes like those other shows, whether it's a pregame show or halftime, or it's an afternoon show, podcast, you name it, about the NBA, just to be talking about more about the game and what goes into team basketball, and what goes into making the NBA and staying in the NBA.
Yeah. For sure.
Most definitely. Now, Teague, you always talk about how the NBA is a business and a fraternity, and what they do for the players after they leave the game. You want to indulge in that a little bit more?
Yeah, obviously it's a bunch of programming now that it's been coming into the league. When I first came in the league, the rookie transition and all those great things that you have to do when you first get in the league, I was wondering how can we, I'm not going to say better it. I think it does a really good job and everything is nice when you retire from basketball. But is anything like you would suggest for some of the guys who might retire at the age of 30, 31, is there anything you could suggest to help them with that process?
It's a great question. A few things. Number one, so for the first time, we have a former player who's running the Players Association, Andre Iguodala.
Yep.
So he's very attuned to the issues of not just former players, but the transition for a player to go from being on the floor to then the rest of their life, and to how they're going to use the skills they've developed as a player and what new skills they might need to be successful at whatever they choose to do, whether it's to be in the media or to run businesses or whatever else. The other thing Andre is doing is building a closer relationship between what has been a separate organization, the Retired Players Association, and the union that currently represents the players, because I think that can help with a smooth transition as well. And then you mentioned the rookie transition program, so that's a program for players coming into the NBA, the transition of coming from college or Europe, wherever it is. Now, the world's changing quickly, because now with NIL deals and collectives, guys are now coming into the league, and same thing for the women in the WNBA, now in many cases having been paid. So they already have a certain sophistication around payments and being, shoe deals and things like that. But so they come in, we have the training in. I think one thing that Andre is very focused on, and in fairness, and the union leaders before him, is enhancing those programs so that while you're a player, there's a lot of different counseling on managing your money, managing your life, dealing with social media, all those things. And the union's done a fantastic job. There's a role for our teams and a role for the league in doing all those things. And then I think also where Andre now, I think the focus is, all right, what more can we do for helping the players manage that transition? And then once I said they become a retired player, because I often, and Jeff, you can speak to this, when you're right off the floor, there may be a period of sort of decompressing, taking some time. There's that change from being on the road the whole time. Often guys are getting reacquainted with their families, or they've had kids while they were playing and haven't been around as much. So there's that period, but then now you have essentially the rest of your life ahead of you. What kind of programs can we help provide to train people? And I'll just say lastly, there's also one of the things that we put in place several years ago, and Michelle Roberts was head of the Players Association, Chris Paul was president of the union, is lifetime health insurance for guys who played in the league, which is a huge deal, and also enhancing the pension programs, the 401k programs, so that for somebody who has played, a certain minimum threshold of years in the league, to a certain extent, you'll be set. You're going to have health insurance. You're going to have a pension. Now, that's not suggesting they should just be satisfied with that, but on top of that, there's all these other opportunities, and you're obviously a great example of it, of what can you then use that platform you have by virtue of being an NBA player, and then building careers beyond what you accomplished on the floor.